The late afternoon sun cast long shadows as the teenagers tossed a football back and forth, their movements fluid and carefree. The golden light bathed the clearing, creating a serene yet vibrant atmosphere. Laughter echoed through the clearing, their youthful energy a stark contrast to the stillness of the surrounding woods. The sound of their joy seemed to breathe life into the ancient trees, making the forest feel alive and welcoming. Mark, the tallest of the group, effortlessly caught the ball, his booming laugh echoing through the trees. His presence was commanding, yet his laughter was infectious, drawing everyone into the moment. Beside him, Sarah, her blonde hair catching the last rays of the sun, playfully punched his arm. Her eyes sparkled with mischief, and her laughter was like a melody that harmonized with the rustling leaves. Emily, quieter and more observant, sat on a fallen log, watching the game with a hint of unease in her eyes. She was the thinker of the group, always analyzing, always aware of the subtle shifts in their surroundings. And then there was David, his dark hair falling across his forehead, a brooding intensity clinging to him. He was a mystery, his thoughts often hidden behind a mask of quiet contemplation. As the sun dipped lower, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, the air grew cooler. The vibrant colors of the sunset seemed to signal the end of their carefree afternoon, a reminder of the passage of time. A shiver ran down Emily's spine, and she pulled her sweater tighter around her. The warmth of the day was fading, replaced by the cool embrace of the evening. There was a shift in the atmosphere, a subtle change that silenced the teenagers' laughter. The forest, once a playground, now felt different, as if it were holding its breath. The woods, once a vibrant backdrop to their game, now loomed dark and menacing. The shadows grew longer, and the once familiar trees seemed to close in around them. The playful energy of moments before evaporated, replaced by an unspoken tension that hung heavy in the air. The forest, now shrouded in twilight, seemed to whisper secrets, and the teenagers felt a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature. They decided to move closer to their campsite, a small clearing nestled at the edge of the dense woodland. The air was thick with the scent of pine, and the distant call of a lone owl echoed through the trees, adding to the eerie atmosphere. A battered silver trailer, their temporary home for the weekend, sat in the center, its windows reflecting the dying light like vacant eyes. The trailer seemed almost out of place, a relic of the past amidst the timeless forest. A fire crackled merrily in the fire pit, casting flickering shadows that danced and swayed with the flames. The warmth of the fire was a stark contrast to the cool night air that began to settle in. The comforting aroma of burning wood did little to dispel the growing unease that had settled over the group. Each crackle and pop of the fire seemed to amplify the silence around them. As darkness descended, swallowing the last vestiges of daylight, the teenagers huddled closer to the fire, their faces illuminated by the flickering flames. They exchanged nervous glances, each one feeling the weight of the encroaching night. The silence was broken only by the crackling fire and the occasional hoot of an owl from the depths of the woods. The sounds of the forest seemed to grow louder, each noise a reminder of their isolation. The smell of pine needles and damp earth filled the air, heavy and almost suffocating. It was a scent that seemed to cling to their clothes and linger in their nostrils. Each rustle of leaves, every snap of a twig sent shivers down their spines. The forest was alive with unseen movements, and the sense of being watched was almost palpable. A sudden metallic scent, sharp and acrid, cut through the smell of the woods, causing Sarah to wrinkle her nose. "What is that smell?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. The others exchanged uneasy glances. None of them could place the strange odor. It was like something burning, something unnatural. Then they heard it. A low growl, guttural and menacing, emanating from the darkness beyond the circle of firelight. The hair on the back of Mark's neck stood on end, and he slowly reached for the heavy branch he had been using as a poker. The growl came again, closer this time, followed by a crashing sound that sent a jolt of fear through the group. Something was out there, something big, and it was moving towards them. Terror lent speed to their movements as they scrambled to their feet, their hearts pounding like drums in their chests, their eyes frantically searching the darkness for the source of the sound, every rustle and snap of a twig sending shivers down their spines. The firelight, their only source of protection against the encroaching darkness, danced and swayed, casting eerie shadows that seemed to move on their own. These grotesque shadows only served to heighten their fear, making the forest seem alive with unseen horrors. Emily, her heart pounding in her chest, thought she saw a pair of eyes glinting from the undergrowth, reflecting the firelight like tiny mirrors. But when she blinked, they were gone, leaving her questioning her own senses. And then it emerged from the trees, a figure so dark it seemed to absorb the light around it. A hulking silhouette, black against the darkness, its eyes two burning embers that pierced through the night. It moved with an unnatural grace, its limbs long and contorted, bending in ways that defied human anatomy. Its body seemed to shift and change shape as they watched in horror, morphing into something even more terrifying with each passing second. A strangled cry escaped Sarah's lips, her voice barely more than a whisper in the oppressive darkness. Mark stumbled backward, dropping the branch he had been clutching as if it could offer any real protection. They were frozen in place, paralyzed by fear, unable to tear their eyes away from the monstrous figure before them. As the creature took a step closer, its rancid breath washing over them like a wave of nausea, they knew they were facing something beyond their worst nightmares. "Run!" David's voice, hoarse with terror, broke the spell that held them captive. They didn't need to be told twice. Turning as one, they fled towards the trailer, their fear lending wings to their feet. Behind them, they could hear the creature's enraged roar, the sound echoing through the trees, chasing them through the darkness. Stumbling over roots and rocks, they scrambled into the trailer, slamming the door shut behind them. Sarah fumbled with the lock, her hands shaking so badly she could barely see. Finally, with a click, the lock engaged. They were safe, for now. Huddled together in the darkness, they listened as the creature raged outside, its heavy footsteps shaking the trailer. "What was that?" Emily whispered, her voice trembling. They all shook their heads, too terrified to even hazard a guess. David, his face pale in the dim light, cleared his throat. Have you ever heard of the Goatman?" he asked, his voice barely audible above the sound of their own ragged breathing. The others stared at him, their eyes wide with a mixture of fear and morbid curiosity. David took a deep breath and continued. "They say he haunts these woods, a creature, part man, part goat. Some say he was a scientist, driven mad by his experiments. Others say he's a demon, summoned from the depths of hell." His voice cracked. "They say he preys on anyone foolish enough to enter his domain." As David spoke, a chilling thought crept into Emily's mind. She distinctly remembered seeing 4 figures silhouetted against the firelight as they ran from the creature. But there were 5 of them huddled in the trailer. Slowly, her blood turning to ice in her veins, she counted again. Mark, Sarah, David herself, and the unknown person huddled in the corner, their face obscured by shadows. She didn't dare speak, didn't dare breathe. The air in the trailer seemed to crackle with an unseen energy. The temperature plummeted, sending a wave of goosebumps across her skin. The smell of damp earth and decay, the same scent that had clung to the creature, filled her nostrils, choking her. The thing was inside the trailer, with them. A blood-curdling scream ripped through the trailer. Sarah cowered against Mark, her eyes fixed on the door. The metal groaned and buckled as something heavy slammed against it from the outside. Clawing sounds like nails scraping against metal sent shivers down their spines. The creature was trying to get in. Panic surged through the confined space. Mark grabbed a rusty cast iron pan, the only weapon he could find, and held it in front of him, his knuckles white as bone. David, his back pressed against the wall, muttered a desperate prayer under his breath. Emily, frozen in terror, could only watch as the door buckled inwards, the metal screaming in protest. Then, as suddenly as it began, it stopped. The clawing, the banging, the heavy breathing outside the trailer, all of it ceased. Silence descended, heavy and absolute. They remained huddled together, afraid to move, afraid to breathe. Minutes ticked by, each one an eternity, until finally, Mark, his face pale and drawn, slowly rose to his feet. Cautiously, he approached the door, every creak of the floorboards echoing through the silent trailer. He peered through the small window, his breath fogging the glass. The clearing was empty. The fire had died down to smoldering ashes. There was no sign of the creature. Relieved, but shaken to their core, they packed up their things and fled, leaving the campsite and the terrifying events of the night behind them. But the memory of the Goatman and the chilling realization that they had been one too many in the trailer would haunt them forever.